So there I was, working on a script for a 30, maybe 40-minute video covering all the ins and outs of fighting games. Some parts of it are done, some aren't, and I'm worrying about how long it's going to take to finish because I already don't upload as much as I want to, and I'm working on another pretty long video, blah blah blah, and then I had an idea. What if, instead of one really long video, I upload 3 or 4 smaller videos and then do an Alpharad style supercut when it's all done?
My God, the man's a genius.
I think this works out better for all of us because for you guys there isn't an insanely long drought without any uploads, and for me making smaller videos is more manageable pretty much on all fronts. So a few adjustments to the script and here we are. It looks like there's gonna be 3 more videos, so if you like this one, make sure to leave a like and sub to the channel to make sure you don't miss the others. I want to start the series off by talking about some of the different types of fighting games because the term fighting games covers a pretty broad spectrum and I don't think people realize just how many types there are. Keep in mind that there will be some generalization since even games within the same subgenre can differ pretty vastly. It only seems fitting that the genre that we start with be the genre that started it all, traditional fighting games. If you walked up to someone on the street and asked them to name you an iconic fighting game, they might tell you to f off. But if they did answer, odds are that they'd either say Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. These are both traditional 2D fighters consisting of good old-fashioned one-on-one combat along a 2D plane. Movement is somewhat limited to 5 cardinal directions and rosters are filled with characters that have unique movesets and stats. This is the most basic type of fighting game, but just like Vanilla Ice Cream and Missionary, hi mom, basic doesn't always mean bad. Actually, quite the opposite. These are my personal favorites of the genres that we'll talk about. I got my introduction to fighting games with Street Fighter IV back in high school and they've always just felt kinda natural to me. Don't be fooled by their simple appearance. Even though these are the fighting game equivalent of a white girl wearing Ugg boots drinking a pumpkin spice latte,
you're basic.
There's still a lot of room for variability and nuance. Everything from the input for grabbing, movement options, game-specific mechanics, damage output, and how long the average combo is can all drastically change how a game feels and is played. You've got slower, more neutral-focused games like Street Fighter V and Mortal Kombat 11, but you've also got fast, in-your-face, unga-bunga games like Guilty Gear. Whatever your preference, there's likely something for you in traditional fighting games, and if you're looking for a way to get into fighting games but don't know where to begin, I would recommend you start here. Because of how bare bones they are, they're usually pretty easy to pick up compared to our other genres, and also tend to be more approachable for newcomers to the fighting game scene. Learning the basics of 2D fighting games will in some way help you while learning any of the other types of fighters, so they're definitely worth trying. Since there's a lot of carryover between 2D fighters and our other genres, we're going to be using them as a focal point as we talk about the others. Next up, we have team fighters. Team fighters are a pretty close subgenre of traditional 2D fighters and share many of the same principles and bases. Still 2D, still beating the life out of someone for seemingly no reason, but instead of one-on-one combat, now you get to choose a team of up to 3 characters. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right?
That is not correct.
For starters, in most traditional fighting games, matches usually play out in a best of 3, where after each round is over, health bars get refilled, and the next round starts over back in neutral, giving each player a few seconds to breathe before essentially starting back over at ground zero. You can use this time to analyze the previous round and plan accordingly. But matches in team fighters are last man standing, so if you want to win, you've got to knock out all of the other person's characters. After a character is down, there is still that brief moment of neutral, but a new character means a different playstyle, so it's not quite the same. This format can lead to some pretty hype matches where a player gets their entire team wiped by only one character, or the opposite where someone does a reverse sweep, knocking out all 3 of the other person's characters with their last remaining character. Combat is generally really fast paced in team fighters, which makes sense being that you've got to get rid of multiple health bars to win. And of all our categories, I find them the most enjoyable to watch. They're pretty much constant action from round start to finish, and there is so much cool shit you can do in these games. But all of that comes with the caveat that the well of knowledge that these games require is much deeper than our other categories. Learning matchups and perfecting combos for a single character can already be a pretty serious commitment, and now you've got to multiply that by up to 3. Trust me, nobody wants to be that dude that's really good at only one character, and when that character inevitably gets mixed out of their Jordans, suddenly looks like they've never played a fighting game before. Just choosing an entire team of characters that you like and fit your playstyle is a monster of its own, but that's not even all there is when it comes to team composition. Most fighting games have a meter system that's used to amplify special moves that extend combos or do super moves. And in team fighters, that meter is shared between your entire team. So characters that require a lot of meter to be optimized should be put in at the anchor position or saved for as long as possible. And characters that do fine without meter should be put in that point where they can hopefully build the meter for the rest of the squad. In games where you can tag in your characters, you also have to look at how well your team's assists work with each other. Assists might seem like they should be an afterthought, but a character with a good one that allows you to extend an otherwise undoable combo or keep block pressure going could easily be the difference between finishing off a health bar and hearing Guile's theme fade in. I know I probably just made team fighters sound really intimidating, and they kinda are, but even though there's a lot to learn, if you take your time and don't try to learn everything at once, you'll eventually get the hang of things. Plus, an upside to the more complicated games is that there's a ton of creative freedom and customization you have as a player. There are so many different ways and variations you could build a team in these games that you could easily spend 10 to 20 hours just testing out different team combos. So if you're someone like me who enjoys coming up with new combos and tech, there's a lot of fun to be had just in the training room of team fighters. Next, we have 3D fighters. Now we're getting to the weird ones. 3D fighters differ from traditional fighting games in that they introduce movement across the third dimension, or toward and away from the camera. Again, a seemingly small addition that actually changes a lot of how the game is played. In general, mobility has a huge impact on how games are played, and fighting games are no different. An extra axis really does add an entirely new dimension to the game. Pun intended, of course. While spacing is important across all fighting games, movement is more emphasized in 3D fighters than our previous categories, so these games tend to be a little more meticulous. Just look at how much micro-adjusting is happening during this professional match of Tekken 7. Now let's talk about how adding a third axis breaks a lot of the rules of traditional fighting games. In 2D fighters, if someone is attacking you, you can block it, jump over it, occasionally low profile, phase it, counter, etc. depending on your character, or you can take the damage. Probably try not to do that last one too much. But in 3D fighters, on the defensive end, you can sidestep an attack, sometimes creating an opening for yourself. And offensively, you can use sweeping moves to hit enemies that like to abuse sidestepping. The extra dimension also messes with special moves that are staples of traditional fighting games. Fireballs are great tools for controlling space and are usually done with a down, down, forward, forward motion. But down moves you toward the camera in 3D fighters. See what the problem is? Tekken gets around this by having you double tap to move across the Z-axis, but even still, fireballs aren't nearly as effective because... As a result, fights tend to be a lot more up close and personal, and special moves are more commonly used by hitting combinations of buttons rather than motions. Stages and combos also work a little different in 3D fighters, and I'm going to talk about them together because they kind of go hand in hand. Where stages are 2D planes which essentially only serve aesthetic purposes in our previous categories, here they're more arenas and can be interacted with. As a rule of thumb, you don't want to be in the corner in any fighting game because characters almost universally get better combos when they have someone against the edge of the stage, but you really don't want to have your back to the wall in 3D fighters. The damage output of wall and stage transition combos can be kinda insane, and getting knocked out of the stage will instantly lose you the round in Soul Calibur, which has ring outs. In terms of actual combos, there's a lot more juggling in 3D fighters than 2D ones. This gives them a bit of an arcadey vibe to me, which I don't mind, but I do know people that play fighting games that don't like watching their character get ragdolled to death. I feel like whether you're getting comboed in the air or while standing, you're still getting your ass beat, but as a newcomer, it can be a little hard to tell when a combo is over and it's your turn. Usually in fighting games, once a character hits the ground, it means a combo is over, but not in 3D fighters. Again, mostly an aesthetic thing, but something to consider. Lastly, and I think we can all agree this is the most important part of 3D fighters, hitbox porn. Platform fighters are our final category and easily the most unique of the four. Often written off as party or kids games because of their cartoony art styles and how simplified they are, they actually have insanely high skill ceilings. Where the goal in most fighting games is to deplete an opponent's health bar, here your goal is to rack up damage on an opponent and send them flying out of a stage. Every time you get sent out of the stage, you lose a stock. First person to lose all of their stocks loses the game. Opponents are sent further as they receive more damage, so true combos can completely change based on a variety of things, like how much damage an opponent has on them, character weight, and whether or not you're in rage mode. Similar to 3D fighters, movement, My bad. Movement is really important in platform fighters, but here there's a bigger emphasis on controlling vertical space. Excessive jumping is widely considered a scrub tactic in traditional fighting games and is a bad habit that most new players have. Jumping leaves you in an extremely vulnerable position, and good players will really make you pay for bad jumping habits. But in platform fighters, you can jump like Van Halen, Crisscross, Destiny's Child. I mean, it's right there in the name, right? Since you lose by getting knocked out of the stage, recovery plays a much bigger role here than in our other genres. Most fighting games have some sort of recovery option for when you get knocked down, be it an aerial recovery, teching, or delayed rising, though you can honestly probably ignore most of them at the learning phases of the game. But recovery is ingrained in almost every part of the game in platform fighters. Obviously, if you get knocked off the stage, you've got to make it back if you don't want to die. But even before that, while you're getting comboed, you can influence the way that your character will fall out of the combo, sometimes saving yourself from a bit of damage, and other times completely saving your stock. While you're on the offensive, not being confident in your ability to make it back to a stage after going deep for an offstage opponent can lead to a lot of wasted kill confirms. Of course, you're knocking on death's door every time you leave the stage, so don't get too greedy. As you might expect, stages carry the most weight in these games to the point where many of them will be outright banned in competitive play. Flat, static stages are universally accepted as the most fair and competitive, which makes sense. I mean, can you imagine trying to have a legit competitive match in this? Finally, I want to talk about a problem that's pretty specific to platform fighters. There's a single giant name associated with them being Smash. Look at how many more copies of Smash have been sold than any of the other fighting games that are prominent right now. This normally wouldn't be an issue, but a lot of people look at Smash as the end-all be-all of platform fighters and won't even give the smaller ones a second look, writing them off as Smash clones and not worth their time when there's already a godlike platform fighter. If this is you, you should really at least try some of the other games. Admittedly, I was skeptical about buying Rivals of Aether because control and game feel and gravity are really hard to fine tune, and I was a little worried that it would feel like one of those old Flash games. But dude, it honestly feels so good to play, it's definitely worth the price of admission. Hell, Brawlhalla is free. You literally have nothing to lose by giving it a shot. And as an added bonus, neither of these games have distributors that for no good reason try to gimp their competitive scenes like an offstage Little Mac.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
So that's cool. Keep in mind that these are just some of the different types of fighters. There are plenty of weird ones like Footsies, which is a completely stripped down, all neutral fighting game, and Lethal League, which is kind of like if Pong was a fighting game. All of this is to say that there's probably a fighting game that you'll like. It's just a matter of finding something that tickles your fancy. And since we live in the age of the internet now, you can pretty easily look up gameplay and tutorials for any game that you're interested in. Plus, fighting games go on sale a lot. A lot. So if you think you might like a game, but you aren't sure you want to pay full price for it, if you give it a couple weeks, you can probably get it at a discounted price. The next video in the series will be covering my favorite thing about fighting games, the characters. So again, if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like and sub so you don't miss the next one. If you want to come hang out during the live streams where I get a lot of the footage for these videos, the link to my Twitch and other socials will be in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, and leave a comment down below for the YouTube algorithm. Tell me what your favorite fighting game is. Okay, bye!